So a question I often hear is, why do you play blue-black tempo? Why not just blue-black Reanimator? And I think it would be a fun way to start with a quick aside, which is that the legacy community takes a while, as amazing as it is, to shift its opinion, and then it stays there for a while. So about a year ago, when Modern Horizon 3 came out, I made a poll about the best tempo deck. I still that best Delver build at that time. So Grixis Delver with Psychic Frog was mostly accepted here, and around 16% of 17 said blue-black tempo with Tamio, Psychic Frog and Nethergolf is the best one. And then in August the perception shifted a bit and got less votes, but it was tied between blue-black tempo and blue-red Delver with a small black splash for Psychic Frog. Of course, was a different meta with the frog. And interestingly, at the beginning of 2025, when the deck got arguably much weaker because the strongest card was banned, but of course the meta was different because of the banning of Vexing Bauble and Grief and later Troll. But at this point here, this was before the troll ban, December 2024, so the majority said blue-black tempo is still good, just play more aggressive with Nethergolf, Delver, Bowmaster, and this is my fault here with the options that I didn't see the combination of Nethergolf, Tamio and Bowmaster. So nowadays in hindsight it's obvious, but at the time I thought maybe there would be one mid-range variant with Strix and Tamio and one aggressive variant with Golf and Delver and Bowmaster. But yeah, interestingly, this is the Golf, Tamio, Bowmaster is the combination that is mostly accepted in the end. And yeah, it's easy to forget how just a while ago people were really dismissive of Nethergolf, more from the tempo perspective, which I agree, the deck is a bit schizophrenic sometimes. You have a few damage threats and you also have card advantage, but you don't really go really hard in either direction. So nowadays the critics are less vocal about blue-black tempo being a bad tempo deck. I think people agree that it's a really strong, if not the strongest tempo deck, together with probably blue-red Cutter and maybe the Questing Druid variant, but I'm not a big fan of that. But now people often say, well, why not just play blue-black Reanimator? And of course, those are different decks. One is a tempo deck and one is like a combo deck with a tempo mid-range backup plan, and of course you can also argue that blue-black tempo is actually mid-range or tempo mid-range, but I wanted to go into this question more detail, so there's a section in the tempo guide linked in the comments, but I also wanted to discuss it in a video here. So first, if you already know you like one of the two decks and you want me to dissuade you, you're in the wrong place. If you have fun with one of the decks, they are both really competitive, they're both really fun. So if you like them, just stick with them, especially if you have a lot of experience, then just stay here. But this video is more for people who are undecided. So let's see a few comparisons. So I would say at the competitive events, both are strong. You can win a big tournament with both. So of course Reanimator has lots of large tournament finishes, but even blue-black tempo also won some challenges, and I think Buffalo Chicken Dinner and other paper events. That's definitely I mean, there are decks in Legacy where you can say, well, if you want to play mono black Pox, maybe try something else. But if you like blue-black tempo, there's no reason to say switch. But on the other hand, also if you like Reanimator, there's also no reason to switch. So in a vacuum, blue-black Reanimator is stronger, but the meta is also sometimes somehow a bit adapted to it, right? So the problem is more at casual events. It's possible that you are at a local game store where, for example, a lot of people play some very casual decks, like, I don't know, Nick Fit or certain, like, I don't know, maybe Jeskai Control or something. There are just certain decks that are not widely played at the top of the meta where tempo can have a bit problem with. So for example, also the energy decks, it's just hard to raise them because they have so much value and in sometimes even life gain. So it is definitely possible if you play in a local meta with certain decks, then yeah, it's possible maybe. And people also don't respect the graveyard hate if they don't have main board grave hate and maybe only 2 slots in the sideboard at most. Then yeah, it can be, I mean, it's not that difficult to switch for a small event. Also, there's not much pressure, not so many rounds, so I think it's fine if you want to win at local events to switch to Reanimator if the meta is a bit hostile to tempo. Then for the skill floor, which is like how easy it is to perform at a somewhat reasonable level, and I think with Blue-Black Reanimator it's medium, because like if you have some experience casting cantrips, sometimes you just have Entomb, Reanimate, and after you get this through, maybe you have 4 stays, Thoughtseize. It doesn't really matter what you do, like if whether you get Atraxa or Archon or what you keep with Atraxa and so on. It's often, especially if you play against other, like against tempo or creature decks where they can't really win with a combo, then it's often at that point already decided and a small misplay doesn't really matter. But of course, it has a really high skill ceiling. So if you are at a large event and people are prepared for it, for example, they start with main board Grave Hate, and then it can be really, really difficult to like win those games against hate or like play those small margins. And if you are not experienced, it's often that you miss something, like you need experience. For example, I have Entomb but not Reanimate. I brainstorm, do I put away the Entomb or do I hope to find a Reanimate later? I think also small decisions that needs lots of experience in the matchups, like how high are my chances if I find it? Can I win with the tempo plan only? So I think both of those decks have a really high skill ceiling, but yeah, the floor, I think, for example, if you play a challenge and you're not really experienced with tempo, I think it will be really difficult to get into the top 8 just because misplays get punished really, really hard. You need to play really well for a really long time, and with Reanimator, sometimes you have the protected combo where you can relax a bit. But yeah, skill ceiling, I would say, is high in both cases. And for weakness to Graveyard Hate, of course, Reanimator is weak to Grave Hate, but there are some games where, let's say, you play against Control and they keep a hand with double Surgical and you just flip a Tamio and win that way. That's also possible, but of course, yeah. Blue-Black Reanimator is much weaker to Grave Hate, such as Fairy Macabre, which you don't really care about with tempo. You only care about the stuff that like gives value or is repeatable, like Spellbomb or Unlicensed Thirst can be really annoying because it also stops Murktide Regent. But yeah, of course, the Graveyard combo deck is more susceptible to Grave Hate, especially even like if your Nethergolf is a 0 power creature, you can still sometimes just get Kaito out and win this way. So archetype I already covered. One is tempo midrange. Depending on how you categorize it, I think it's not really worth arguing that much about it, but of course it has some mid-range elements, while the other is a combo deck. This is also something that I think people forget. They say, yeah, that's such a strong deck, but if you don't have experience playing combo decks, then maybe you play your Ponders wrong, or your Brainstorm, or your play the Wasteland to stop the opponent, when it would be better to keep it up to protect your own combo. So I think having the right mindset for combo is not the strength of everyone. So maybe people on average have this and this win rate with Reanimator, but if your win rate is higher with tempo, then you should play that. It's definitely possible that you have a higher win rate with tempo, especially in large events. Like if it's a small casual event where you have a lot of time and you don't have so many rounds, then I think it's alright to play a deck that you're not experienced with. But if you have a large event, like eternal weekend and there are lots of rounds and you get tired, and I think then it's really easy to miss something with a deck you're not comfortable in. And then there's weakness to non-basic land hate, and I think this is not often discussed. So with blue-black tempo, you can often operate on basic island and basic swamp. I mean, you cannot play Murktide Regent at this point, but many of the other plays like Kaito, Bowmaster, you can make. But I often see this when I play the matchup blue-black tempo against Reanimator. Then I think it's, if they start on basic island, it's sure it's safe versus wasteland for now, but it allows me to play much more differently, because often I have those hands where I have, for example, a Nihil Spellbomb and a Tamio, and I'm on the draw, and I think, actually I would like to play Tamio because I want to progress my own game plan, but just to be sure I don't die to the combo, I have to start with the Nihil Spellbomb, and then maybe the Thoughtseize away the Tamio, or next turn maybe I need to Bowmaster, or I get wastelanded. So playing early threats is really important with blue-black tempo, especially in the matchup against blue-black Reanimator. But yeah, I think with blue-black Reanimator, while both have a really stable mana basis, I think with blue-black Reanimator, going for the basic island especially is a bit more restricting, because you need to cast double black spells, and it does seem easy in Tomb Reanimate, but sometimes there are those games where there's lots of dazing, or like a blood moon comes down and maybe you only get one spell down, and then that's why, in my opinion, Reanimator is a bit weaker to non-basic land hate. But yeah, they're both like kind of okay against wasteland, but if it's like recurable wasteland, it becomes a problem, or Ghost Quarter, Life from the Loam or something. But yeah, maybe feel free to write in the comments if you disagree with that point. I just often notice that Reanimator players often play on basics against me, and I'm not much of a fan. I think sometimes you just have to power through with Underground Seas, which is also a comment I receive often for my gameplay with blue-black tempo. So I also try to do it more if I play tempo against wasteland decks, to just get Underground Seas in many situations. Of course, it depends what the exact spot is, but yeah, sometimes you just have to power through the wastelands and not screw up yourself even more by playing a basic and then a duel, for example, and then you're even more screwed. So a point which is not really much discussed is the sideboard flexibility. So because Reanimator has often those tempo cards to go more into the tempo direction in the sideboard, like Fatal Push, Bowmaster, Nihil Spellbomb. So they have less sideboard slots, and so in blue-black tempo, if for example you have a local meta which is full of a certain archetype, or sometimes can even be different archetypes or different decks that have the same weakness. For example, land, if there's lots of lands and Cloud Post and Mystic Forge and Storm, then maybe you could say, well, I play 2 Null Rods because it stops Storm and Mystic Forge, and I play 2 Harbingers of the Seas because it's good against lands, Mystic Forge, and also Cloud Post. Or there are lots of red decks around, like it's really hard to find space for a lot of Hydroblasts in the Reanimator deck, while that's easier with the Tempo deck. So maybe in your local meta game there's lots of blue-red Cutter and mono-red Prison, then maybe you go up to 3 Hydroblasts or even 4, or maybe there are lots of white decks like Death and Texas with Mother of Runes or Cephalid Breakfast, and one of the energy decks with Ocelot Pride, and maybe you can even try something crazy like Dread of Night, or you want Toxic Deluge. Engineered Explosives more often seen in Reanimator because also gets rid of stuff like Gravedigger's Cage. But yeah, I think this is an advantage of blue-black tempo that people often miss. Then there's the preparation. So I think people are very prepared to face Blue-Black Reanimator right now. So if you wake up any legacy player in the middle of the night and ask them, hey, how do you sideboard against Reanimator? They will probably instantly tell you. So for example, for me it would be, I sideboard out 3 days and a wasteland, and I bring in 2 Sheoldred's Edict and 2 pieces of Graveyard Hate. And that's like everyone is super duper prepared against Reanimator. So, I mean, people are still somewhat prepared against Blue-Black Tempo because I think they hate losing to Tempo. So for it being like a 6% or 5% deck, I think people are more prepared. Also maybe because there's overlap with Blue-Red Cutter, so maybe the Tempo decks in total are like 10%. But still, I think people preparing for Reanimator, both in deck choice and deck construction and sideboard construction, helps. So for example, maybe they go for the Fairy Macabre in the sideboard, which is strong against Reanimator, but it's not good against you. But otherwise, maybe they would play more slow value stuff, like more unlicensed Hearses, more Nihil Spellbomb or something like this. So you're a bit shielded by Reanimator, so in case Entomb gets banned, I think it could actually be possible that Blue-Black Tempo gets worse, because maybe people come out more with their mid-rangey decks that go over the top of us. But right now, I think this is a strong point of Tempo. And also sometimes after the first game, and sometimes even the second, people don't know which deck you're on, and you can often pretend your Reanimator or the other way around. And if we look at the deck construction, there's a lot of common core. There's Ponder Brainstorm, Force Days, Thoughtseize, Tamio, Murktide Regent. And the only really tells for Reanimator are the Entomb, Reanimate, Animate, Dead, Atraxa, Archon. And the cards where you're sure it's Blue-Black Tempo is Nether Golf, Kaito. And also cards that are mostly in lower numbers in the main in Reanimator nowadays. So they're like a tell, but not completely. They're more often in the sideboard are stuff like Fatal Push, Bowmasters, and Nihil Spellbombs. So if you can win without revealing some of those cards, so for example, if I'm playing Reanimator and I'm winning with the Tempo plan because my Tamio upticks ultimates, then I often try to not reveal any of those cards, and the other way around in Tempo. If you manage to win with Tamio Ultimate or like Tamio Murktide, then sometimes it's possible that you don't reveal that you are on Tempo, and then because of the higher numbers for Reanimator, people may bring in their Fairy Macabre and other bad cards and be less prepared for you, right? Then there's a danger of potential bans, and this is, I don't know if you are someone who switches every week, then maybe it's not a problem for you, but I'm someone who goes more all in with the preparation. Maybe how you see how I wrote dozens of pages in this guide, and of course got the contributions of many amazing other people. But yeah, for me, I like preparing for a stable deck that is there for a while. So that would be a bit annoying for me if I played Reanimator and like learned all the sideboarding and all the tips and tricks, and then something important got banned and I needed to relearn everything completely from scratch. Of course, there are some common play patterns, but yeah, I think Tamio ban in this year is unlikely. Maybe it will come at some point, but right now I think it's Blue-Black Tempo is a really good choice if you want to have something that you can prepare a lot and which doesn't get invalidated really quickly. And there's also a point by Gus from the forums where before I said that Reanimator is better against the casual decks. He has also a bit of an other perspective on that. He says he finds the matchups with those fair decks to be actually quite good against Reanimator if they are constructed appropriately, respecting the graveyard in main deck and also sideboard, because it's quite easy to shut off the Reanimator angle. So like decks like Cradle Control and Energy, Blink and so on on which struggle versus forge. Okay, so this is also an interesting perspective on the topic. So I'm interested now, what do you think? Do you play Reanimator? Do you play Tempo? Or do you like switch a bit here and there, which I can encourage? I mean, after all, most of the cards have the common core, so you don't, especially online, I also sometimes play Reanimator. But my advice is, if you're going for a really big competitive event, it's better to play what you know, what you're more comfortable with. But if it's a small event like a league or your local LGS, then feel free to whatever you feel like at the moment. But don't feel forced to switch if there's not really a reason. Okay, and there's also a land tell, which I forgot to say, is that Reanimator plays 2 Undercity sewers and 3 wastelands usually. So if you play Blue-Black Tempo with a second sewers, you can pretend you're Reanimator if you're against someone who's really in tune. But yeah, otherwise I'm really interested, what do you think? Do you think Blue-Black Tempo is a good deck, or it's just, do you think you should just always play Reanimator? Yeah, feel free to tell me in the comments, and see you later. By the way, Blue-Black Tempo also has a good Blue-Black Reanimator matchup, and if you want to know more about this, then please go to the appropriate section in the Blue-Black Tempo guide. There is lots of text. There's also lots of videos of different people, which are all linked here. So from me or from Inf, for example, and there's also of course a sideboard guide, and interestingly also an alternative take of Inf on sideboarding, who I asked, and he said he boards out 2 Nether Golfs on the draw to go more into a control role. Interesting, and I'm trying it out right now. So thanks and see you later.